What if the man you thought would be your forever turns his back on you the very moment you gather the courage to live authentically? William stared at the phone in his hand, the screen still glowing with the last message from Daniel. I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry. It had been only hours since William had finally come out to his family during that tense dinner in their suburban Seattle home. The words had tumbled out like a confession long overdue. Mom, Dad, I'm gay. And Daniel, he's not just my roommate. He's my partner. The reaction was immediate and shattering. His father's face hardened into stone. His mother wept silently into her napkin, and the silence that followed spoke volumes more than any shouted rejection ever could. William had rehearsed the moment 1,000 times in his head, imagining support or at least understanding, but reality hit like a freight train. He drove back to the apartment he shared with Daniel in the pouring rain, his heart pounding with a mix of relief and terror. The door was already half open when he arrived. Daniel stood in the living room surrounded by half-packed boxes, his dark eyes avoiding William's gaze. They had been together for 5 years, meeting at a quiet coffee shop downtown where Daniel, a rising marketing executive, had spilled his latte on William's laptop and laughed it off with that easy charm that made William fall instantly. Their life together had been comfortable, filled with weekend hikes in the Cascades, late-night talks about dreams, and the kind of quiet intimacy that felt safe in a world that still whispered judgments. But Daniel had always been careful, insisting they keep things private even from close friends. One day, he would say, when the timing is right. William had believed him, until the night he could no longer carry the secret alone. I thought we were in this together, William whispered now, his voice cracking under the weight of betrayal. Daniel shook his head, zipping up a suitcase with mechanical precision. You knew I wasn't ready, Will. Coming out changes everything. My job at the firm, my parents in Texas who still send me Bible verses every Sunday. I can't risk it all like you just did. The words landed like blows. William reached for him, but Daniel stepped back, his expression a mask of regret mixed with fear. I love you, but I can't do this. Not publicly. Not now. By morning, Daniel was gone, leaving behind only a half-empty closet and the faint scent of his cologne that lingered like a ghost. William sank onto the couch, the apartment suddenly too big and too empty, the walls closing in with echoes of every promise they had made. He called in sick to his job at the community center, where he counseled at-risk youth, and spent the next 3 days staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment. How had he missed the signs? The way Daniel always changed the subject when talk turned to future plans involving family holidays or joint bank accounts. The subtle distance that grew whenever William hinted at being more open. By the end of the week, the pain had hardened into something sharper, a resolve born from desperation. William packed his own bags, sold what he could, and booked a one-way flight to New York City. Seattle held too many memories, too many ghosts. He landed in the chaos of JFK with nothing but a duffel bag and a battered laptop, crashing on the couch of an old college friend in Brooklyn. The city swallowed him whole at first, its noise a welcome distraction from the ache in his chest. He found a barista job in a small cafe in the village, the kind of place where rainbow flags fluttered unapologetically in the windows. Nights were the hardest, when the loneliness crept in and he scrolled through old photos of Daniel, deleting them one by one until his thumb hovered over the final image of them smiling on a ferry to Bainbridge Island. He pressed delete and felt a small crack in the armor he was building around his heart. Friends from the cafe noticed the quiet sadness in his eyes and gently pulled him into their circle. There was Marcus, a loud bartender with a heart of gold who had come out in high school and never looked back, and Lena, a graphic designer whose own coming-out story involved a dramatic Thanksgiving meltdown that ended in reluctant acceptance. They dragged William to support group meetings at the LGBT Center, where stories of rejection and redemption flowed like the coffee he served by day. For the first time, William spoke aloud about Daniel, the abandonment that still stung like fresh salt in a wound. He chose fear over us, he said one night, voice steady for the first time. The group nodded, and in their eyes William saw not pity but recognition. Slowly, The days began to feel less like survival and more like possibility. He started a private journal on his laptop, typing late into the night about the betrayal, the family silence that followed with awkward phone calls full of "we need time," and the slow realization that his worth did not hinge on Daniel's approval. Little did he know that those late-night writings would one day become the spark that lit a fire for thousands. The months blurred into a rhythm William never expected. New York in winter was brutal, the wind slicing through his thin coat as he hurried between shifts and meetings, but it also forced him to confront the numbness he had carried from Seattle. He enrolled in night classes at a local community college, studying psychology with a focus on identity and trauma, driven by the nagging voice in his head that whispered he could help others avoid the isolation he had felt. Daniel's absence lingered in quiet moments, like when William passed a couple holding hands on the subway and felt the old pang twist in his gut. He had tried calling once, months after the breakup, but the number was disconnected. A final door slammed shut. The rejection taught him a harsh lesson about boundaries, one he repeated like a mantra during therapy sessions he could barely afford. At the LGBT Center, William volunteered more hours, facilitating workshops for young men struggling with their own secrets. His calm presence and honest stories drew them in, and soon he was sharing snippets of his journal online under a pseudonym, Echoes of Courage. The first post went viral in niche forums, a raw account of the night Daniel left titled, "The Day Love Chose Silence." Comments flooded in from strangers across the country, men in small towns in Ohio, executives in Chicago closets, teenagers in California high schools. "You just described my life," one wrote. William read them late at night, tears blurring the screen, realizing for the first time that his pain had a purpose beyond himself. He expanded the blog, adding entries about family reconciliation attempts, his mother's tentative emails asking if he was okay, his father's continued radio silence. Each post peeled back another layer, exposing the internal war between grief and growth. By spring, the blog had attracted a small following, and a local podcast host invited him on air. Sitting in the cramped studio, William spoke for the first time publicly about coming out, the boyfriend who fled, and the city that rebuilt him. Listeners reached out via email, sharing their own stories of loss and resilience. One message stood out from a man named Alex in Boston, who had lost his partner to similar fears and now ran a youth shelter. They met for coffee, and what began as shared pain evolved into a deep friendship that reminded William connection was still possible without possession. Alex introduced him to networking events where activists and creators gathered, and William found himself speaking at panels, his voice gaining confidence with every word. The old apartment in Seattle felt like a distant dream now, replaced by a tiny studio in Queens filled with books on queer history and sticky notes of affirmations. Yet doubts crept in during quiet nights, wondering if Daniel ever thought of him, if the love they shared had been real or just convenient. The turning point came unexpectedly at a Pride event in June. William marched with the center's group, holding a sign that read, "From Betrayal to Belonging." Cameras flashed, and a reporter from a national LGBTQ magazine pulled him aside for an interview. The article ran with the headline, "The Man Who Turned Heartbreak into Hope," featuring William's photo smiling amid the parade. Readers poured in, and overnight the blog traffic tripled. Invitations followed for speaking gigs at colleges and corporate diversity trainings. William quit the cafe job, using his savings and freelance writing to go full-time. He traveled to Chicago for his first major conference, sharing the stage with therapists and advocates, his story resonating with hundreds in the audience. Back in New York, he updated the blog with reflections on forgiveness, not for Daniel but for himself, releasing the anger that had chained him. The city lights no longer felt lonely but alive with possibility, and for the first time William allowed himself to imagine a future where his voice mattered beyond the pain. 2 years passed in a whirlwind of growth William could scarcely believe. The blog had evolved into a full platform with a newsletter reaching 10,000 subscribers, each issue tackling topics from navigating family rejection to building chosen families in urban America. William's days filled with Zoom calls from young men in rural Texas, emails from parents seeking advice on supporting their sons, and late-night writing sessions that poured out chapters for a book deal he never saw coming. Publishers approached after a viral TEDx-style talk he gave in Philadelphia, where he recounted the exact moment Daniel walked out and how that abandonment became the catalyst for his purpose. The talk garnered millions of views online, and suddenly William was fielding requests from media outlets, his face appearing in features about modern masculinity and queer resilience. Yet success brought its own shadows. At a gala in Los Angeles, surrounded by celebrities and activists, William spotted a familiar profile across the room. Daniel, older now with streaks of gray at his temples, stood laughing with colleagues from a West Coast firm. Their eyes met, and the air thickened with unspoken history. Daniel approached hesitantly during the cocktail hour, his voice soft. "Will, I saw the talk. You've done incredible things." William's heart raced, old wounds reopening like fresh cuts. They stepped outside to a balcony overlooking the city lights, where Daniel admitted the years had been hard, his own coming out delayed until a health scare forced honesty with his family. "I was terrified that night," Daniel confessed, eyes downcast. "I thought losing you would protect me, but it only left me empty." The conversation stretched into the night, unearthing layers of regret and what-ifs, but William felt no pull to rekindle what was lost. Instead, he listened with the empathy he had honed through countless stories, offering closure without reopening doors. "You taught me I could stand alone," he said quietly as they parted. "And that's the greatest gift." Back in New York, the encounter fueled new writing, chapters exploring the gray areas of love and abandonment without bitterness. William's book, Echoes Unsilenced, hit shelves to critical acclaim, landing on bestseller lists and sparking book tours across the Midwest and South. At each stop, lines formed with readers sharing hugs and tears, men who saw themselves in his journey from Seattle Heartbreak to national voice. Family ties mended slowly too. His mother flew out for a signing in Seattle, embracing him publicly for the first time, whispering apologies for the years of distance. His father remained distant but sent a single email after reading the book. "Proud of the man you've become." It was enough. William expanded his work, launching a mentorship program pairing closeted professionals with those who had walked the path before, drawing from his own scars to guide others through crises of identity and relationship fallout. Friendships deepened as well. Marcus and Lena became constants, celebrating milestones with rooftop barbecues and beach weekends in the Hamptons. Alex visited often from Boston, their bond evolving into a steady partnership of mutual support without romance, proving love came in many forms. Yet the internal work continued. William attended retreats focused on healing betrayal trauma, journaling through nights when memories of Daniel's departure resurfaced uninvited. The platform grew to influence policy discussions, with William testifying before state committees on mental health resources for LGBTQ youth. Each victory felt like another step away from the man who once crumbled in an empty apartment, replaced by someone who stood tall not despite the pain but because of it. The American landscape, from bustling New York streets to quiet Midwest towns, became the backdrop for stories he collected and amplified, weaving a tapestry of resilience that inspired a generation. The third year brought challenges that tested every ounce of growth William had earned. A backlash erupted online when a conservative commentator twisted his story into clickbait, accusing him of glorifying broken relationships and undermining traditional values. Hate messages flooded his inbox, some threatening, forcing him to hire security for events and lean heavily on his support network. Marcus organized a community vigil, Lena redesigned his website with stronger privacy features, and Alex flew in to help strategize responses that stayed true to compassion over retaliation. Through it all, William refused to silence his voice, publishing a series of posts addressing the criticism head-on. "My story isn't about blame. It's about choosing truth even when it costs everything." The controversy only amplified reach, drawing mainstream media coverage that highlighted the very issues he fought to illuminate. During a tour stop in Atlanta, William met a young man named Tyler at a bookstore event, eyes filled with the same fear William once knew. Tyler's boyfriend had echoed Daniel's exit, leaving him isolated in a conservative family. William spent hours after the signing listening, then connected him with local resources and followed up weekly via text. Moments like these reminded him why the work mattered, turning personal scars into lifelines for others. Back home, he expanded the mentorship program nationwide, partnering with organizations in cities from Miami to Denver, creating virtual circles where men shared stories of come-outs gone wrong and the long roads to healing. The program flourished, with testimonials pouring in about restored family bonds and newfound careers built on authenticity. A family crisis pulled William back to Seattle unexpectedly. His father's health declined after a stroke, and though communication had been sparse, William flew home without hesitation. Hospital rooms became spaces for tentative conversations, his father finally voicing regrets about the dinner that fractured their relationship. "I was scared too," the older man admitted one quiet evening, hand trembling in William's. Tears flowed as they bridged years of silence, not fully mending but planting seeds of understanding. Daniel's shadow appeared again in a surprising way when an old mutual friend reached out, revealing Daniel had followed William's career from afar, quietly donating to the mentorship fund under an anonymous name. William chose not to contact him, finding peace in the distance, knowing some chapters closed for good reasons. The book tour resumed with renewed energy, culminating in a sold-out event at the New York Public Library where William read passages about the night of the breakup and the dawn that followed. Audience members stood in applause, many wiping tears, their stories mirroring his own in ways that affirmed the universal thread of courage amid loss. That night, walking home through rain-slicked streets reminiscent of his Seattle departure, William felt a profound shift. The boy who once begged for Daniel's return had become the man lighting paths for thousands, his voice echoing across America in podcasts, articles, and community halls. The journey was far from over, but the foundation was solid, built from betrayal into a legacy of hope that no one could take away. As the fourth year unfolded, William's influence extended beyond personal stories into systemic change. He collaborated with lawmakers in Washington, D.C., advocating for expanded mental health funding for LGBTQ individuals facing family rejection and relationship trauma. Testimonies from his mentorship participants filled congressional briefings, their voices amplified by William's steady presence at the podium. Media appearances multiplied, from morning shows discussing coming-out statistics to late-night panels exploring modern masculinity. Each interview circled back to that pivotal night with Daniel, framing it not as defeat but as the spark that ignited a movement. "Pain doesn't define us," he often said. "What we build from it does." Personal life balanced the public demands with quiet joys. He adopted a rescue dog named Echo, whose playful energy filled the Queen's studio with laughter and long walks through Central Park. Weekends brought gatherings with Marcus, Lena, and Alex, where conversations ranged from lighthearted gossip to deep reflections on growth. A new connection sparked with a fellow speaker named Jordan at a Chicago conference, their shared passion for storytelling leading to tentative dinners and honest talks about past heartbreaks. Jordan's gentle patience mirrored nothing of Daniel's fear, allowing William to explore vulnerability without the old terror of abandonment. Their bond grew slowly, rooted in mutual respect rather than desperation, teaching William that healthy love honored independence as much as intimacy. Challenges persisted, however. A close mentorship participant relapsed into isolation after a family confrontation, prompting William to fly across the country for an in-person intervention. The experience reignited doubts about his own unresolved grief, leading him to intensify therapy sessions focused on releasing the final threads tying him to Seattle memories. Journal entries from that period captured the internal dialogue, the anger that still simmered, the forgiveness he extended to himself for trusting too deeply, and the gratitude for the man he had become. The platform continued expanding, launching an app for anonymous story sharing that connected users nationwide, fostering virtual support networks in small towns where physical communities were scarce. A milestone arrived when William returned to Seattle for a hometown speaking event at his old community center. The room packed with familiar faces and new ones, including his mother in the front row beaming with pride. As he spoke of the journey from that fateful dinner to national advocacy, the audience rose in standing ovation. Daniel was not there, But a letter arrived weeks later expressing quiet admiration and closure. William read it once, then tucked it away, the words affirming that both had moved forward on separate paths. The trip solidified his roots, blending past and present into a cohesive narrative of resilience that inspired even more followers. Back in New York, with Jordan by his side for the first time in his home, William felt the pieces align, the betrayal of years ago now a distant chapter in a book still being written. The 5th year marked a culmination William could only have dreamed of in those dark Seattle nights. His second book, a collection of stories from mentorship participants titled Voices Unbroken, debuted at #1 on national lists, featuring forewords from prominent activists and endorsements from mental health organizations. Book signings stretched across the country, from packed auditoriums in Los Angeles to intimate libraries in rural Kansas. Each stop filled with men who credited William's honesty with giving them permission to come out on their own terms. The mentorship program scaled to international chapters, connecting queer men in Canada and Europe through shared online forums, proving the American story of betrayal and rebirth resonated globally. William's relationship with Jordan deepened into a partnership built on trust and shared purpose. Their evenings filled with collaborative writing sessions and quiet affirmations that healed old wounds. Family bonds strengthened further when his father attended a virtual event, publicly acknowledging his son's impact in a rare social media post that reached thousands. The moment brought full-circle healing, transforming the original rejection into a testament of evolving understanding. Even Daniel's path crossed indirectly through mutual acquaintances, reports of his own quiet advocacy work echoing the lessons learned from their shared past. William wished him well without regret, his heart fully invested in the life he had forged. The pinnacle came at a national LGBTQ summit in New York, where William delivered the keynote address to a standing-room-only crowd. He recounted the opening question that had haunted him, the abandonment that nearly broke him, and the years of rebuilding that turned pain into purpose. "I lost the man I loved," he said, voice steady and clear. "But I found myself and in doing so, helped thousands find theirs." Applause thundered as lights dimmed, leaving William bathed in the glow of accomplishment. Backstage, surrounded by friends and Jordan's proud embrace, he reflected on the journey's full arc, from shattered apartment to this stage of inspiration. The city that once offered escape now symbolized home, its streets witnesses to transformation on a scale he never anticipated. Through every high and low, William's story proved that courage born from crisis could ripple outward, touching lives far beyond his own. The platform continued growing, with new initiatives for youth in foster care and workplace inclusion programs drawing on his expertise. As seasons changed once more, William stood on his balcony overlooking the skyline, Echo at his feet and Jordan's hand in his, knowing the road ahead held more chapters but the foundation remained unbreakable. The man who once asked, "What if?" in despair now answered with a life that inspired hope for every silent heart waiting to speak its truth. In reflecting on this journey, I've come to see that true strength emerges not from avoiding pain, but from facing it head-on and choosing growth over bitterness. William's story reminds us all that betrayal, while devastating, can become the very catalyst for authenticity and impact. The lesson here is simple yet profound. When love falters in the face of truth, don't shrink back into silence. Speak anyway, build anyway, and watch how your courage lights paths for others. Forgiveness isn't always reconciliation, but it's always freedom. If this tale moves you, carry forward the reminder that your story, no matter how fractured it begins, holds the power to heal and inspire far beyond what you imagine.